Hi, this is a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Our devotion for today, September 20th, 2023, is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verses 6 through 15. Now at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man that you call King of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Jesus said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Our devotion passage today provides an interesting hypocrisy for us to examine. The high priests and the Pharisees want Jesus to be crucified, not just because he threatens their power in the temple if they acknowledge him as the Messiah, but also because of their fear he will incite the people, which will bring the Roman soldiers down on all of them. In other words, they fear he will cause insurrection among the people, which will cause violence and punishment to be brought against the people and against the leadership of the people by the Roman soldiers. So, who does Pilate offer the Jewish leaders and people to choose between in the annual release of a prisoner? Jesus and Barabbas. Jesus, who is anti-violence and has not caused any problems among the people, but has performed miracles and in fact has healed many. And Barabbas, who is a zealot and an insurrectionist and has been jailed for murder, for perpetrating violence. You would think that this would be a no-brainer for the people and for the Jewish leadership, especially if the leadership is concerned about insurrection and violence. Yet, with the leadership's encouragement, perhaps even with their bribes, the people choose Barabbas to be released, which means the high priest and the Pharisees have set free the exact kind of person they portray Jesus to be and don't want. The hypocrisy of the Jewish leadership in this movement and this moment is every bit as glaring as the hypocrisy of the national leadership of this nation today. The Jewish leadership did not want to bring or did not prevent insurrection from coming to the Jewish people by doing this. Insurrection came to the temple and to the synagogue in the form of the establishment of a new people of God, the establishment of a church for those who believed in Jesus, with a new covenant between God and them, and a tearing apart of Judaism, with many Jews being converted to faith in Jesus and becoming members of this new movement, before even the acceptance of the Gentiles. My question to you is, why do we make choices that ultimately bring about exactly what we're hoping to prevent? The Apostle Paul confessed to this very thing in Romans chapter 7. "For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate." Have you ever noticed this in your own life, from decisions you have made? If so, you're not alone. It happens to most people, if not all people. But we can minimize this happening in our life if we surrender ourselves to the Word of God and His authority. The high priests and the chief priests and the Pharisees all resisted surrendering to God's will and God's plan in Jesus, which brought about this very problem in the first place. My friends, surrender to the will and authority of God, and you will minimize situations like this in your life. Go in peace, serve the Lord.